So you're a country like China, and you're looking to invade an unsuspecting third world country like Sri Lanka. Maybe it's because you want their natural resources, maybe you need them for strategic or political reasons. Whatever the case may be, there are a couple of ways you can go about conquering another country in the 21st century. You could go in guns blazing and actually invade the country, like what Russia did to Ukraine, but like Russia, you would probably get sanctioned big time. And losing billions of dollars to sanctions isn't exactly your idea of a successful invasion. The other option is you could try negotiating with the government if it's corrupt enough, basically bribing them to give you the same control you would have if you invaded, but that is a little risky, and it could come off really threatening to other countries like America, who don't want you expanding your influence. So we need a better strategy, one that gives us nearly the exact same benefits of a full-blown invasion without the global backlash, an invasion technique where no one will know you're taking over until it's too late. And even when the world finally figures it out, they won't be able to do anything about it because everything you did was technically legal. Ah yes, we're talking about the art of enslaving third world countries in debt, also known as debt diplomacy, a white-collar invader's best friend. This is where you give these third world countries a loan for rosy-sounding things like infrastructure projects to uplift the people. But here's the catch. See, these developing nations are always corrupt. The leaders of these nations don't care about improving the lives of their people, they're in it for themselves. So when they get these loans, their goal is to pocket as much of that money for themselves as possible. So it's pretty much guaranteed that if you get a country like Sri Lanka into enough debt, if you lend its government enough money, they will eventually fall into a financial crisis, guaranteed. And when they fall into financial crisis, well, they won't be able to pay back their loans anymore. And when that happens, you, out of the kindness of your heart, offer them a deal that writes off all of their debts. So kind of you, right? But the trick is forgiving this debt will come at a price, as it always does. And the price they have to pay is giving you de facto control over their nation. They're forced to give you good economic deals, they're forced to let you build military bases on their land. Basically, you get all the same benefits as if you invaded without the global backlash. Neat, right? It happened to Latin America in the 1980s, when Mexico defaulted on its foreign debts, and then almost all of South America followed suit after. And then it happened again in the 90s in Asia, starting with Thailand. But this time, today, it's not just one continent or region at risk. Oh no. According to the World Bank, there are actually 107 countries all around the world at risk of a debt crisis, and 69 of those countries could default on their loans within this year. In other words, 107 countries around the world right now are on the brink of enslavement. But not just any enslavement, debt enslavement. But the real question is, as an aspiring colonizer, how are you gonna profit from this impending doom? My name is Tran, and we make documentaries on money, power, war, and crime so that you can see the world for what it really is. A giant game of acquiring power. You can't get out of this game either way, so instead of being a victim, why not learn to be a better player? Your parents, teachers, friends, society will never teach you any of this, so we're going to. Stay dangerous, and this is the global debt crisis.
And by the way guys, if you've been wondering where my voice has been for these videos, I have been up to no good, and I finally get to share what I've been working on with you guys at the end of this video, so make sure you stick to the very end.
This is Gotabaya Rajapaksa. In 2019, he became the president of Sri Lanka, but he wasn't the first Rajapaksa family member to rule the country. From 2005 to 2015, Mahinda Rajapaksa, his older brother, was in charge. Under Mahinda, Sri Lanka's economy had boomed, all thanks to billions of dollars in foreign aid from the International Monetary Fund or IMF, World Bank, and countries like America and China. But the problem was all this growth was fake. It was all fueled by debts. Between Mahinda becoming president and his brother taking over, Sri Lanka's foreign debt went from $11 billion to $56 billion in just 15 years. For comparison, $56 billion was almost 70% of Sri Lanka's total GDP in 2020. If Gotabaya planned on keeping Sri Lanka on the road to success, he would have to start paying off those debts as quickly as possible. But instead, he did the exact opposite. He took on even more loans from China and the IMF for projects that would make him look good but weren't exactly great for the country's economy. Then, as part of his campaign promises, he cut the country's taxes from 15% to just 8%. And just like that, the Sri Lankan government lost 25% of its revenue. And just when it looked like Sri Lanka's financial situation couldn't get any worse, COVID hit. And it pretty much shut down the entire country's tourism industry, which was responsible for over 12% of its economy. So in a matter of months, Sri Lanka's government lost 37% of its income through both tax cuts and COVID-19, while taking on more debt than ever. But President Gotabaya didn't care. He wanted Sri Lanka right up there with the most developed countries in the world, so he just kept spending and spending and spending on pointless projects and developments. And that's when things started really going wrong. You see, by 2020, Sri Lanka owed $56 billion in foreign debts, and to pay off all that debts, the country would need foreign currency like dollars and euros. The problem was Sri Lanka imports more than it exports, and when you pay for foreign goods, you pay in foreign currency. So slowly but surely, the foreign currency started to run out. By March 2022, Sri Lanka only had $1.8 billion in foreign reserves left, with debt bills of nearly $7 billion still outstanding for 2022. In other words, the Sri Lankan government was screwed. They were spending more foreign currency than they were making. Their president wasn't doing anything to stop the spending or inflation. So unsurprisingly, Sri Lanka finally descended into chaos around April 2022, after the government announced that they wouldn't be able to pay off any of their billions in debt at all. Suddenly, food imports stopped. No one wanted to sell Sri Lanka oil, and the country ran out of everything from cooking gas to paper. It was an economic and political disaster. President Gotabaya and his family fled the country in July as thousands of protesters stormed the presidential palace in rage.
The demonstrators stormed into the president's official residence in Colombo. Anger is rising at the government's handling of a dire economic crisis, the worst in 70 years.
Sri Lanka's economy had been destroyed in almost every way imaginable. And now, one of the only countries that can bail them out is you, China. You can offer them enough money to get their economy back on track and to pay off some of their most urgent loans. But when you offer them help, you'll make sure the bailout comes at a price that will shackle Sri Lankans for generations to come. And here's the thing, Sri Lanka is just the first domino to fall. According to the UN, 69 countries are at risk of going the exact same way as soon as this year. And when all the other dominoes start falling down, you'll be right there waiting to play hero and save them. As China, you stand to gain a lot of influence all over the world by bailing out those 69 at-risk countries once they inevitably fall into chaos. And once you bail them out, their governments will be forced to repay you in all sorts of ways, from making changes to their laws that benefit your citizens and businesses, to siding with you against America and the West. But in order to find the perfect targets for your power and influence campaign, you're gonna need to know exactly what to look for. Luckily, the UN has listed out 3 factors that put countries most at risk of a debt crisis, basically doing all the research and hard work for you. So here's exactly what you need to look out for in your next victim. 1. Rising food prices, and 2. Rising energy prices. Any country that relies on imported food and fuel has seen a massive increase in prices over the last year. That's because the war in Ukraine has pushed oil and food prices way up, making it more expensive not to just buy food, but to also transport it to the people who need it. And number 3, you're looking for tighter financial situations.
COVID crisis has impacted so many industries this year as the virus forced businesses across the country to close their doors.
Traders are really worried about some of the things that we talked about yesterday, the potential spread of the coronavirus and how that's going to impact the global economy.
Thanks to COVID, almost every developing country in the world has taken on more debt at higher interest rates to stay afloat. If these countries don't have the GDP to pay back the money they borrowed during COVID, they are at major risk of defaulting on their loans and going the Sri Lanka way. Find a country that has all 3 of these issues and you've found your perfect victim. And here are the top contenders. First, we've got El Salvador, a tiny country in South America that recently made massive headlines when its president announced that it would be the first country to accept Bitcoin as legal tender, meaning people can now buy, sell, and pay for anything in the country using Bitcoin. To make the move, the government bought 2,300 Bitcoins back in 2021. Unfortunately, the Bitcoin price tanked soon after, wiping out $56 million of the government's money with it. Now that may not seem like much, but the IMF wasn't all that happy with El Salvador making Bitcoin one of its accepted currencies. which means El Salvador might not get any help from the IMF to pay off the $20.9 billion in foreign debt it owes. That is your opening. And with an $800 million payment coming up in January and only $3.4 billion in foreign reserves, El Salvador is gonna need some serious help very soon, making it the perfect time to offer your financial assistance in exchange for a few favors, like letting you buy one of its islands to turn into a deep water port just 2,000 miles from the American mainland, in the middle of what's supposed to be America's sphere of influence. Argentina has a really bad track record of repaying its debts, and its economy hasn't been doing all that well lately. Inflation is set to reach 70% by the end of the year, and the country owes $274 billion in foreign debt, even though it only has around $40 billion in foreign reserves. That is really bad. Considering the fact that the government has to pay massive amounts of money to import natural gas to produce electricity, Argentina is not gonna last long. Just like Argentina, things in Lebanon have not been going well for a while now. The country is in the middle of a major economic crisis. Banks have blocked people from accessing their dollar accounts. There are regular electricity cuts. And the 2020 Beirut explosion caused billions of dollars in damage that still needs to be repaired. By some estimates, the country's foreign debt now equals almost 500% of its GDP. Lebanon is a country just waiting for a handout. And at this point, with things as bad as they are in the country right now, they're not gonna care what strings are attached, just how you like it. Since 2018, Turkey has been caught in the middle of a major financial crisis. The Turkish lira lost almost half of its value in 2021 alone, and things have gotten so bad that suicide rates in the country have increased by 500% in just the past 6 years. With nearly $500 billion in debts and only around $7 billion in foreign currency reserves, Turkey is gonna need a massive bailout if it's gonna avoid heading down the same path as Sri Lanka. And who knows what its government is willing to do to bail them out. And then there's Egypt, the #1 importer of wheat in the world, and also Ukraine and Russia's biggest client when it comes to buying food. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine has left Egypt without its regular cheap source of wheat, which means the government now has to use even more of its foreign currency reserves to pay for its food, while also facing $7 billion in debt repayments in just the next 6 months. Each of these countries is on the verge of a crisis. They're right there on the edge just waiting to fall like Sri Lanka did, and when they do, you better be there waiting to pick up the pieces. What China is doing right now to countries like Sri Lanka has been what America and the West has been doing to third world countries for decades now to conquer the world. See, after researching all these videos over the years, I've stumbled upon the fundamental truth of the world. All the most powerful countries and corporations are the most successful because of one thing: slavery. The answer is slavery. But not traditional slavery with whips and chains, but slavery through much subtler forms, like sovereign debt, currency wars, the money printer. Think about it, the West has all the money and power, and yet they produce nothing. They do none of the hard labor. Poor countries, on the other hand, have no money, do all the heavy lifting, and get paid next to nothing for it. Financial slavery. When all of this clicked in my head, everything we talk about on this channel all of a sudden made sense. All the wars, the corruption, the exploitation, the debt, the money printing. It all made sense. It's like I could finally see why the world is the way it is. I could see as clear as day why a few select elites conquer and thrive, while the rest of the masses suffer. So I kept researching, I kept putting the pieces together, and I put all my findings into my greatest body of work ever. Introducing Financial Slavery Masterclass. We're talking about over 20 plus lessons all narrated by me in the same binge-worthy documentary style you've come to love, where each lesson will leave you on the edge of your seat. And in this masterclass, we expose all of this. We expose exactly how the most powerful people on this planet have systematically created and used this system of financial servitude to gain all their wealth and power. And most importantly, we go over how thanks to modern technology, you too can now exploit the system to gain wealth and power for yourself without being as evil as them. And we walk you through exactly how step by step, no matter where you are in life, even if you just have a job right now or don't even have a job. If you've been wondering where I've been lately and why I haven't been narrating these videos, it's because I've spent like the last 6 months or so working on this. I've been putting my heart and soul into this. and I am beyond excited to finally share it with you. So I highly encourage you, if you've liked any of our videos, go watch the first lesson of this masterclass for free right now with the link below. I promise you, you will not regret it. Once you go through Financial Slavery Masterclass, you will never look at the world the same again. And on top of that, I wanted this masterclass to be a chance for you to financially benefit too. So on top of learning how the world works and how to take advantage of it in the long term, by enrolling, you'll also be able to earn around $100 for every person you refer to the masterclass. This is just like Andrew Tate's affiliate program, where we have step-by-step lessons and resources on how to promote this masterclass by posting TikTok clips of my videos. But instead of just $25 per sign-up like Tate's program, you get 4 times that commission at around $100. There's a 14-day sweatshop guarantee refund policy too, so scroll down and click the link below to enroll in Financial Slavery Masterclass right now. Go to evil.university/war with the link below.